Ladies and gentlemen, you ever had someone in your life that you knew deep down God was trying to move you away from, but you kept holding on? Come on, don't act like I'm the only one. You prayed about it. You cried about it. You even tried to convince yourself that maybe, just maybe, God wanted you to fix them instead of release them. But here's the truth. Sometimes God can't bring you into your next if you keep holding on to what was never meant to stay. See, we talk a lot about open doors, but what if the next open door can't appear until you close the one you keep peeking back through? I came to tell somebody today, there are times when God's voice isn't saying hold on, it's saying let go. And the reason you feel that tension, that unease, that confusion, it's not punishment, it's direction. So today, I want to show you 3 clear signs that God might be telling you it's time to let go of someone. Because sometimes letting go isn't losing, it's making room for what God has been trying to give you all along. You know that feeling when something just doesn't sit right anymore. When the peace you once had around someone starts to fade, and no matter how hard you try to bring it back, it just won't come. That's not coincidence. That's not mood. That's not overthinking. That's God trying to get your attention. Because peace is not just a feeling, it's a form of confirmation. When God is in something, there's a certain stillness in your spirit, even when everything around you is loud. But when God starts to move you on from a relationship, that peace starts to lift. And you can try to chase it, you can try to recreate it, but it won't come back, because peace leaves when purpose leaves. See, sometimes we hold on to people not because they're still good for us, but because they were once good to us. We remember the version of them that helped us, encouraged us, prayed for us. But if the purpose that brought you together has already been fulfilled, and you're still holding on, that's when peace starts to disappear. You start feeling that inner unrest, that constant unease. You wake up thinking about the tension, you go to sleep praying for clarity, and all the while God is whispering, I'm not in this anymore. It's not that the person is bad, it's just that the assignment is over. When peace leaves, it's often the first sign that the grace for that relationship has lifted. You can force conversations, plan meetups, try to make it like it was, but nothing feels right. You find yourself over-explaining, over-apologizing, overstaying. That's what happens when we try to hold on to something that heaven has already released. You can't have divine peace in a place where your purpose has expired. And I get it. It's hard to let go, because peace doesn't always leave with a loud exit. It doesn't always come with a breakup or a fallout. Sometimes it just slips away quietly while you're still trying to make things work. You don't even notice it at first, but then you start realizing that being around that person takes more energy than it gives. You start feeling small when you used to feel strong. You start second guessing yourself when you used to feel confident. That's how you know the peace is gone. Here's what I've learned. God never removes peace to punish you. He removes peace to protect you. He knows when something that once helped you is now starting to hold you back. He knows when the connection that once strengthened your faith is now draining it. And so he starts to pull your peace away as a signal, not as a punishment. That's your cue. That's your warning light. So if you've been wondering why you can't shake that restlessness, maybe it's not anxiety. Maybe it's alignment. Maybe God is saying, you've grown beyond this. Because when the peace leaves, it's often God's gentle way of saying, the purpose here is done. You ever notice how some people leave you feeling empty after every conversation? You start the day full of joy, full of energy, and by the time you finish talking to them, it feels like your spirit has been drained dry. That's not love, that's not partnership, that's not purpose. When God places people in your life, they don't just take from you, they pour into you, they challenge you, stretch you, help you grow. But when you're connected to someone who's no longer aligned with your calling, you'll feel it in your energy. Because the difference between being developed and being drained is who's doing the pouring. You can love someone deeply and still realize that their season in your life has shifted. What once built you up now breaks you down. What used to motivate you now manipulates you. It's subtle at first. You tell yourself, maybe they're just going through something. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. But over time, you start noticing a pattern. You give encouragement, but they give excuses. You offer grace, but they offer guilt. And before you know it, your joy starts to fade. Your confidence starts to shrink. And you can't remember the last time you left an interaction with them feeling refreshed. That's how you know you're being drained, not developed. God never calls you into relationships that consistently deplete you. Even in difficult seasons, divine connections still carry life. They still produce growth. But toxic attachments feed off your strength until you start doubting yourself. And the scary part is, sometimes we mistake emotional exhaustion for loyalty. We keep giving and giving, thinking that's what love looks like, when in reality, we're slowly bleeding spiritually. If you have to constantly sacrifice your peace just to keep someone in your life, that's not commitment, that's bondage. When God connects you to someone, there's a holy exchange that happens. You both sharpen each other. You push each other toward purpose. But when that connection turns one-sided, that's a red flag. You shouldn't always be the one encouraging, always forgiving, always fixing, always praying them through while they're pulling you back. That's not balance. That's burnout disguised as devotion. And God never intended for your purpose to suffocate under the weight of someone else's immaturity. Sometimes the reason you feel so tired all the time isn't because you're doing too much. It's because you're holding onto someone God told you to release. Your spirit is working overtime, trying to carry something that's not yours anymore. And no matter how much you pray for strength, peace won't return until obedience does, because you can't be filled by what God is no longer in. If you keep showing up empty, it's time to stop asking for more strength and start asking for more discernment. Pay attention to the fruit. If their presence consistently leaves you anxious, heavy, or confused, that's not your assignment anymore. God doesn't drain you to teach you a lesson. He'll develop you through mutual growth. But when someone's draining you, that's His gentle way of saying, it's time to let go. You can't move forward if you keep dragging what God already told you to drop. There are moments in life when it feels like every step you take is harder than it should be, like something invisible is pulling you back. You pray, you plan, you push, but nothing flows. And deep down, you know it's not that you're lazy, it's not that you're unfaithful, it's that you're carrying someone who was never meant to go where God is taking you next. Their presence blocks your progress, not because they're evil, but because they're not assigned to your next chapter. Sometimes we confuse companionship with calling. We think that just because someone has been with us from the beginning, they're meant to go with us until the end. But God doesn't build destiny around comfort. He builds it around purpose. And when you try to take people into places they weren't anointed to enter, it slows you down. You find yourself explaining what God is doing in your life to people who were never meant to understand it. You start dimming your light just so they don't feel insecure around your growth. And before long, you realize that you're shrinking just to keep someone else comfortable. That's not love, that's limitation. There are some relationships that feel familiar but aren't fruitful. They used to help you, but now they hold you. You keep trying to justify it, saying, "We've been through too much together," or "They were there when no one else was." But gratitude doesn't equal permission to stay stuck. God can use someone for a season and then release them when that purpose has been fulfilled. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're obedient. And sometimes obedience looks like walking away from the familiar so you can step into the fruitful. When someone's presence blocks your progress, it often shows up as delay. Opportunities start slipping through your hands. Your focus starts scattering. Your motivation starts fading. You're praying for acceleration, but you're still tethered to what God told you to release. You can't run your race while looking over your shoulder, making sure they're keeping up. God says, "I've called you to move, not babysit someone else's complacency." You can't soar if you're tied to someone who's content crawling. And I know it hurts. It hurts to outgrow someone you once prayed with. It hurts to realize that the person who once helped build your faith is now the one testing it. But sometimes, the very thing you're calling loyalty, God calls delay. He'll keep tugging on your heart, giving you signs, and you'll keep wondering why things feel stuck. When in reality, He's saying, I can't open this next door until you close the last one. So maybe the blockage isn't the devil. Maybe it's disobedience. Maybe it's your refusal to release what God already removed His hand from. Because when someone's presence starts blocking your progress, it's not punishment, it's preparation. God is protecting your future from what your feelings won't let go of. And the moment you release what's holding you back, that's when you'll see momentum return, doors open, and peace flow again. Have you ever noticed that when God wants to get your attention, He doesn't always send a storm? Sometimes He just keeps sending the same situation. You keep praying for new doors to open, but you keep finding yourself facing the same type of person, the same kind of heartbreak, the same pattern of disappointment. It's like life keeps looping, and you're asking, God, why does this keep happening to me? But maybe the question isn't, why does it keep happening? Maybe the question is, what am I not learning? Because God keeps repeating the same lesson until obedience becomes your answer. Sometimes God's mercy shows up as repetition. He doesn't let you move forward until you've truly learned what He's trying to teach you. You'll meet someone new and they'll look different, talk different, act different. But the lesson feels familiar. The same red flags, the same compromise, the same emotional drain. And that's when you realize God isn't punishing you. He's protecting you. He's saying, I'm not sending new blessings if you're still entertaining old behaviors. Every time you ignore His warning, He'll let you circle back to it again, not to shame you, but to shape you. You can pray all day for God to remove the pain, but if you keep holding on to what caused it, you're not ready for healing. He'll keep placing you in situations that test your boundaries until you finally decide to trust His no. Because sometimes we mistake God's silence for approval when really it's patience. He's waiting for you to recognize the pattern. He's waiting for you to say, I've seen this before, and I'm not walking that road again. The moment you discern the lesson, that's when the cycle breaks. You can't graduate to the next level if you keep failing the same test. Maybe God already told you to let that person go, but you keep texting, keep meeting up, keep hoping they'll change, and every time it ends the same way, you get frustrated, wondering why it hurts so much. But God isn't repeating the pain, He's repeating the opportunity to obey. Each cycle is an invitation to grow stronger, wiser, more discerning. The lesson will stop repeating when your response starts aligning with His instruction. We serve a God who loves us too much to let us stay stuck. So when He keeps showing you the same situation, it's because He's trying to grow your character before He expands your territory. He knows that if He gives you something greater while you're still holding on to what's broken, you'll sabotage the blessing. So He keeps bringing you back to the same kind of challenge until you handle it differently. That's how spiritual maturity is built, not through escape, but through awareness. If the same type of person keeps showing up in your life, it's not bad luck, it's divine repetition. God saying, you can't change what you don't confront. The test will stop when trust begins. And maybe this time, instead of asking for a new situation, you ask for new strength to finally pass the lesson He's been trying to teach you all along. There's a fine line between who you're assigned to and who you're attached to. And if you don't learn to tell the difference, you'll end up carrying people God never called you to carry. Sometimes we get so emotionally tied to someone that we start mistaking our feelings for God's will. We start thinking, if I love them this much, surely God wants me to stay. But love doesn't equal assignment. Just because you care about someone doesn't mean you're called to fix them. And the moment you confuse attachment with assignment, You start stepping into roles God never asked you to fill. Attachment says, I need them. Assignment says, I'm sent to them. Attachment drains you because it's fueled by fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of letting go. Assignment empowers you because it's fueled by purpose. It comes with grace, clarity, and boundaries. The problem is, when you don't know which one you're operating from, you'll start calling bondage ministry and dysfunction loyalty. You'll stay in relationships out of guilt instead of guidance, and you'll confuse suffering with serving. But God doesn't call you to save people. He calls you to show them Jesus. And once your part in their story is complete, He gives you permission to move on. Sometimes God will connect you to someone for a specific season so that you can help them grow, encourage them, pray with them. But when that purpose is fulfilled, He releases you. And if you stay after the release, what was once a blessing becomes a burden. You'll feel it in your spirit. The peace will fade, the conversations will feel forced, and the relationship will start taking more than it gives. That's how you know your assignment has ended, but your attachment won't let go. You can't heal someone who refuses to be whole. You can't carry someone who keeps choosing chaos. You can't play savior and expect peace. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that loving someone doesn't always mean keeping them. God will often use people to teach us lessons about trust, boundaries, and obedience. But once the lesson is learned, He expects you to release them so you can move forward. Holding on out of fear or guilt doesn't make you loyal. It makes you disobedient. Because every moment you spend trying to sustain an expired connection is a moment you delay the new one God is preparing. If you've been feeling torn between what you feel and what you know, that's the tension between attachment and assignment. Your feelings want to hold on, but your spirit knows it's time to let go. And here's the truth. The piece you're missing will return the moment you align with your assignment. Because God never meant for you to carry the weight of someone else's transformation. You're called to plant seeds, not force growth. Once you've done your part, trust God to handle the rest. When you stop confusing attachment with assignment, you make room for the right people, the right peace, and the right purpose to enter your life. Letting go doesn't always feel holy when you're in the middle of it. It feels like loss, like failure, like maybe you missed God somehow. You replay every moment in your mind, wondering if you could have done something different, prayed a little harder, held on a little longer. But what if letting go isn't rejection? It's redirection. What if God isn't taking something from you, but guiding you towards something better? Because sometimes God closes a door not to hurt you, but to reroute you toward healing. The pain you feel isn't punishment, it's positioning. When God says it's time to let go, it rarely comes with a clean emotional break. Your heart still remembers, your mind still wonders, and your spirit still wrestles. But what feels like rejection is often God's way of protecting you from what you can't yet see. Maybe you didn't lose them. Maybe God removed them so you could finally find yourself again. There are relationships that were never meant to last forever. They were meant to teach you who you are, what you need, and how to trust God when everything in you wants to hold on. Rejection stings because it hits the part of us that still wants control. We want to understand why it ended, why they changed, why things couldn't go back to the way they were. But God doesn't owe us explanations when He's offering elevation. Sometimes He'll break your heart to save your destiny. You'll think you're being abandoned, but in reality, He's making space for what's next. He can't pour new wine into old wineskins. He can't bring new blessings into a life that's still cluttered with expired connections. So He allows rejection to redirect your focus back to Him. You'll know it's redirection when peace starts replacing pain. The tears may still come, but there's a quiet knowing that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You start realizing that what you thought was the end was actually a beginning. You see how that loss made you stronger, how that goodbye taught you gratitude, how that heartbreak brought you closer to God. That's when you understand what left you wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to develop you. If you're in that place where it feels like everything is slipping through your fingers, don't assume God's forgotten you. Sometimes He's just rearranging your life so that what's meant for you can finally find you. You're not being left behind. You're being realigned. The very thing that walked away may have been blocking the blessing that's on its way. So when God removes someone, don't rush to fill the void. Sit in it. Let Him heal it. Because rejection that comes from God always carries direction within it. It's His way of saying, this isn't it. I've got more for you. Letting go isn't losing. It's trusting that God's plan is still working even when it hurts. And once you accept that truth, you'll stop mourning what left and start celebrating what's coming.